let's just talk a minute. Well, let's just kind of introduce the topic today, which is an open ask me anything. So this is for you, for your benefit. I can talk as long or as little as the people in the chat want. But what I want to talk about is something that's like personal for me from various different experiences that I've had. And then I think is a hot topic for a lot of people who are learning, have been through a learning process, are trying to figure out how to learn more, trying to figure out how to transition careers. And that's the comparison of like having a formal computer science degree versus going to something like a programming boot camp versus basically just doing self-teaching, where you kind of set your own path and find your own resources and go through them in the time that makes sense for you. So I've got experience in some capacity in all of those categories. I have a formal computer science degree from Vanderbilt, which actually wasn't on purpose that I wore this today. I didn't think about it, but I get to rep a little bit of my alma mater here. So I have a formal computer science degree from Vandy. Graduated in 2013. Actually applied for 2 different jobs at Microsoft that I didn't get. And I didn't get the software development job at Microsoft. And I honestly wasn't ready at that point. And anyway, they liked me interview wise, but just not enough for those 2 jobs, and ended up getting a technical evangelist job where I started doing a lot of this type stuff, presentations and demos and like building samples and that kind of stuff, and really enjoyed it. Anyway, about 3.5 years ago, for the summer, or basically like 4 from now, 4 years ago, I started taking courses on Udemy just to learn more, and eventually took a web development course, and that literally changed like the trajectory of my career. Like I had never done anything JavaScript, never done anything web development, took that course, and then I was like hooked, and I took more and more resources and watched videos and articles and read books and all this kind of stuff. And now it's like where I am today. I write JavaScript, not necessarily professionally, because I don't write professional software right this second, but have written it for several years. And we'll talk about the paying for a degree in a second. Anyway, so I do JavaScript. I speak on JavaScript. I speak on React. I speak on that stuff. And that started from a Udemy course. So in that sense, I feel like I've done a ton of self-learning myself. And then also I've taught a boot camp. So a couple of the students / TAs that were in that group, Lawrence and JC, are in the chat, which is super cool. So thanks for being here, first of all. And then anyway, so I feel like I've got experience in these 3 categories, and I want to just open it up to people that are out there for any questions that you might have, any thoughts you have. And if you want, we can kind of start with the idea of imagine paying for a degree. And to Clive Thompson, that seems like a joke, but I think depending on the scenario, that would make sense. So if you have any like starting points you want to look at or talk about, throw them in the chat, ask questions, throw them in there. I'll wait a second. If nothing comes in, I'll just start to talk a little bit, maybe with the idea of paying for a degree, and then we'll go from there. So any questions or thoughts, throw them in the chat. Looks pretty quiet in the chat so far. Cool. All right, we've got all right, cool. 2 questions here, or a question and a comment. All right, good. A couple questions. So let's start with Funky Amish Man. How long did it take you to get a job with JavaScript after you first started? So the timing of this was I worked for Microsoft as an evangelist for 3 years, and as an evangelist doing presentations and demos and stuff, I wasn't super technical. Like it was basically a lot of like hello world demos. I really didn't deeply understand things. I didn't have software development experience. I was really lacking in that area. So when my wife and I were moving to Memphis, I couldn't find anything that made sense job-wise with Microsoft. So I moved on to FedEx as a software developer. Now, I had done some of the JavaScript courses for about 4 months up until that point. I would say I like knew the basics of JavaScript at that point, and wasn't hired for JavaScript skills. It was more just like my development skills. And I had interned with FedEx, so it was relatively easy for me to get my job with FedEx at that time because I built a reputation during my internship. I had done well then and had the capacity to learn whatever I needed to. So I wouldn't say it's a fair comparison of like I learned a lot in JavaScript and then I got the job because of that. I got the job for being a developer, and then ended up making JavaScript my thing at FedEx. And that's one of the things that I would suggest as well. Like if you have things that you're interested in, technologies, frameworks, databases, whatever it is, like jump at opportunities at your job, whatever the first job is, or second job or third, and kind of find your niche, find whatever that thing is that you really enjoy that you can be known for. And I would say I was known for a couple of things, but front-end development was really one of my big things. And that's because I spent so much time learning and then I really took those opportunities myself to find or to work with front-end stuff. So it's probably, how long did it take to get a job? It's just skewed. It doesn't quite line up with like, oh, I studied really hard and then I got a job using JavaScript. It's more like I was naturally transitioning anyway. I was already learning, but then I took the initiative to apply that over and over again in my job. So the next comment by Clive, I think Clive's going to be interesting commentary here. My friend has a degree. All he does is view his lectures online. Yeah, this is unprecedented, right? We're in such a weird time. I wouldn't say that's a fair, like, that's how a college degree is, because it's not, right? Like just the time that we're in now means that classes are remote. And honestly, that's got to be super, super tough, because one of the benefits of being in a college or getting a college degree, one is the experience. Like I wouldn't trade my college experience for anything in the world. It was 4 of the most amazing years of my life. I met my wife. I met some of my best friends in the entire world. We literally just had like a FaceTime or like a Zoom meeting with some of my roommates, and it was a blast. It's great to catch up. So there's like that side of the experience. And then there's like right now, everything's online. So that sucks, but that's not common. And then Clive, you had another comment about he never goes into his lectures. You can do that. That's selling yourself short a little bit. I actually took a web development, I put this in quotes, a web development class in college that I never attended once and got an A. And I think that just kind of tells you like some of them can be a joke. And for me, the way I approached college was I was used to getting good grades. My target was to get good grades, but I didn't really understand the things that I was doing and supposed to learn. And because of that, coming out of college, I like genuinely wasn't prepared to be a software developer. And I think that showed in several of my interviews. Like for transparency here, like I got asked about basics of object-oriented programming in an interview, and I was like, yeah, I don't know. I couldn't explain it. So I would say that side of it, from my perspective, was really, really bad, of not taking advantage of appreciating what I was doing and thinking about the fact that like, this is what I'm going to do for a job. So I need to invest in actually learning versus just passing a test at this point. Water Seeker said, did you code in your CS degree? Yes, we wrote a lot of code. It was a lot of like, I think back to like our CS 101 class, it was for loops and like basic things. And at the very end, we got to like classes and objects, and I didn't understand anything that was going on, to be honest. Like I did my homework and I got it through, but I didn't understand. We took a data structures and algorithms class. That was pretty good. Actually, that was pretty insightful, but I don't think I fully understood what I was learning at the point. And in data structures specifically, a lot of the code that we wrote was like creating these data structures that already exist, which helps with like the fundamental understanding of how things work behind the scenes. But I feel like with my degree personally, I didn't get very much practical knowledge. Like I couldn't walk out into the real world and say, yeah, I already know how to do this, this, and this. I knew how to write like some for loops. I mean, that's exaggerating, but I feel like I didn't know a whole lot more than that. I just really didn't know much at all coming out of it. So one of the things that I compare with like boot camps and self-learning, I feel like those can be much more practical. You learn how to use Git. You learn how to work with other teams. You learn how to build a project that people can actually use instead of just like creating data structures that already exist behind the scenes. So there's much more practical learning. So yes, I did code in my CS degree, but I don't think it was very practical. Lawrence says, initial thoughts are more on the social acceptance of non-degree devs and their perception by degreed devs. Really interesting. My personal perception is a developer is a developer. If you know your shit, you know your shit, and that's it. Like bottom line, you don't have to have a degree. You don't have to have a certificate from a Udemy course. You don't have to have anything. If you know your stuff, you know your stuff. Now that's my perspective. I think this industry is one that is specifically good for this type of question because we are becoming more accepting, and we're realizing that a traditional CS degree is not a requirement to be successful in this field, and more companies are realizing that as well. So you see more and more people getting jobs in that area. Lawrence, I don't know if you mind me sharing this, but you're a great example of, like, you didn't have a computer science degree, but you knew your stuff, and now you're a developer at FedEx, which is very exciting for me, from my perspective, for that to have worked out for you, but just in general. So I don't know that I certainly don't judge people that don't have degrees. I actually have much more respect for people who go through a boot camp or self-teach than naturally for someone who goes through a degree. Because for me, like, college was kind of a default, and like just going to college, and I fell into computer science without really knowing what it was. I just kind of stumbled into it. So, yeah. But people who go through boot camps or self-teach, they know what they're trying to do, and they know what they need to do in general to get there. So I don't judge. I don't think a lot of people judge. I think you're seeing more and more people get hired with non-degrees, which is great, but it still is a process, and it is more difficult to get a job without a degree. That's the fact that it is now. You have to work harder. You have to demo more at this point, but I think we're transitioning away from that. JC Smiley says, what concepts can a person learn with a CS degree and boot camp that anyone that is self-taught should need to know, but normally don't? So here's the benefit of my computer science degree. I feel like coming out of my degree, I have a better understanding of how programming works than people who go through a boot camp in general. Now, remember, people who go through a boot camp and self-teach, I think, have much more practical knowledge. But coming out of college, I feel like I had been exposed to more of how things work kind of behind the scenes. You don't think about that stuff as much. You rarely get like a real algorithms and data structures content in programming boot camp. Really, you're trying to build stuff that teaches you like core skills, but then also gives you a demoable project and projects for your portfolio. So rarely do you really dive deep into like algorithms and data structures. And I think that really is essential at some point. I don't think it's essential right off the bat, but I think it is really important for people to have that understanding. So that is one skill that I would say, by being in the classroom, by having that specific class, that is one thing that I think that I got better from because of that, versus the time that may not be allocated for it in a boot camp. Now, on the self-teaching side, I've also followed up in taking a JavaScript algorithms and data structures course by Colt Steele on Udemy that I highly recommend checking out. And I've kind of reinforced the things that I've been exposed to before with taking this course and kind of refreshing and honestly a lot more reinforcing of what I should have understood coming out of that course. So that's one thing in particular. I think you like benefits of being in a university with a professor. You make connections, you network. Like I've got people in computer science areas for my degree all across the country and world. And like, these are people I can talk to. These are people I learned with. It's nice to have that camaraderie and that group of people to work with. Now, you also get that in a boot camp. It's a little bit different when you're in college and you're kind of like experiencing life together too, which is kind of fun. So yeah, I think that's a big one, just core, like the super technical side of how things work. But other than that, like boot camps and self-teaching, they're just much more practical to me. And I think that's really, really useful. Everything is self-taught. Professors and books can only give you guidance. So to a certain degree, I agree with you. I think the benefit, again, of a college degree is you have a professor, you have someone to lead you, you have other people to work with, you have a structure. Self-teaching, the difficulty in self-teaching is you can find resources, but it's hard to find which ones make the most sense and in what order to take them in and how to build on them and do that sort of stuff. But with any of these options, it's absolutely critical to take what you learn and practice what you learn by building stuff. Hands down, that's the best way you'll learn. So in terms of like professors and books can only give you so much. Yeah, same thing with boot camp, same thing with self-teaching, with Udemy courses and Udemy videos or YouTube videos. You have to take that stuff and apply it. I can't tell you how many days I've gone into work or come into a new project and I'm like, oh, I've done that same thing in a personal project on my own, and now I can take that and apply it to my job. So it's critical to build stuff to reinforce all the stuff that you learn. Is it fair to say your networking was more valuable than your degree in getting your first job? I would say not necessarily the networking part, literally just having the degree. That is one of those things that, again, this was 2013, so it's a little bit different. Now you see more and more people getting opportunities without having the degree, but it's still difficult, and you still see a lot of companies that don't hire people without a degree, and some specifically without a computer science or math or computer engineering related degree. So is it fair to say networking was more valuable? No, I just literally putting Vanderbilt on my resume, computer science, bachelor's, like that's what was the most value out of it, to be honest. It wasn't the networking, although that is really helpful, but it's definitely the actual, just the degree itself, just having it on a resume opens up opportunities, especially at the time that weren't available to people without degrees and still are difficult to get into now anyway. So question from JC is, are self-taught devs considered a less valuable job applicant than computer science and boot camp grads? That's a great question. I understand that when I give my responses, this is not necessarily like my opinion on the subject. This is just how I think it is. And yes, I think that would be a less valuable job applicant. The reason is it's hard to demonstrate your skill set without having some sort of formal, I've done this or I've done this. Now, the flip side of this is if you make it past just your resume and you get to an interview, all bets are off. It doesn't matter. If you know your stuff, you know your stuff. And that's what matters, hands down, to me. Some people might feel a little bit differently, but that's all that matters. So is it going to be more challenging without having a boot camp and or a computer science degree? Yes, I definitely think it's more challenging, but there's all the other flexibility that comes with self-teaching. You don't have to quit your job. You can still work. You can do it at your own pace. You can find the resources that you think are most important. And it's even more important when you self-teach, I think, to have demoable projects and things that you worked on for a portfolio. Like, you really have to sell the fact that you know the stuff that you say you do, and you have to demonstrate that by some sort of portfolio with projects on it that show that you did that sort of stuff. So yes, it's more difficult. That's just how it is. But you compensate for that by really working your ass off, but then also having those like really good projects to show, to say, regardless of me not having a piece of paper, I've got these skills and here's why I have it. All right. Rashad says, thanks for doing this. Yes. I was giving a boot camp program a try, but it didn't seem to be the best fit for my personal learning style. Fair enough. So now I'm taking this on as a self-directed quest. What are some challenges I could expect in terms of learning from credible sources and building a respectable portfolio to land a position later on? Cool. So this is interesting. Went to a boot camp and didn't feel like it fit your style. This is something that you have to pay attention to. You have to kind of like take into account, how do you actually, yeah. So Funky Amish Man is asking, can you elaborate? What about it didn't match your learning style? Fair enough. Yeah. Throw any other details you have about that. But this is something to consider in whatever route that you take. Are you the kind of person who can't sit in a classroom for hours at a time? Do you not have the attention span? Maybe that's not in a bad way. It's just who you are and how you work. If you struggle with that sort of stuff, then that might not be the best issue or best option for you. You mentioned that pacing was an issue. Yes, this is one of the things in self-teaching is you control the pace and you can do what you want. You can go as fast or as slow as you want. I'm wondering, Rashad, was the pace too fast or too slow for you? I would say if the pace is too fast, maybe take some time to self-learn for a few months and then go back and do it again. So you come in a little bit more prepared. If it was too slow, I would say stay in there and just take advantage of the things you can learn so that you have that formal boot camp on your resume, but then spend your time when you're bored learning other things and continuing to practice. Like, take all of the examples and homework assignments and just do them beyond what the expectations are. So I think you can kind of take that two different ways. So challenges that you'll face in terms of learning from credible sources, I feel like I found a pretty good rhythm I do Udemy courses. That's what I do. That's what I've done a ton of. I know the course instructors to look for. I can certainly recommend, if people are interested, I can recommend courses for you. If you want to do that, I'd be happy to. I have several that I love and send out to a lot of people. once you kind of get a gauge for how content is and what's important to you, you can go and easily pick it out. You can also like start a course online, like a video series, and pretty quickly you can probably tell if it makes sense for you or not. So you can kind of adapt based on that too. The great thing about Udemy for me is courses are $10 to $15. If you don't like a course, you wasted $10 maybe, $15. But the Udemy review system, I think, is pretty good. You can tell by the number of students and the number of reviews how good that course is. So, yeah, I think the more sources or content you take, the more I think you'll be prepared to decide on which ones are credible. And then the other aspect of this, building a respectable portfolio, this is kind of what I was saying a second ago. It's even more important for someone that's self-taught for you to be able to say, this is what I can do, and here's why. Here's how I can show you that I can do these things right now. So I would say you should have a pretty tangible portfolio that is live. People can go to that application and see it. It doesn't have to be the biggest and best thing out there. It just has to work, and it has to demo that you can do stuff. So I think the struggle that you might have is creating that portfolio and making it, one, finding the balance of like not spending too much time on a given project, making sure you get something done, but also the balance of like it looks good and it feels good and it's something that you want to show off. Honestly, I would say if you look at the demo or portfolio item that you build and you're proud of it, run with that. If you look at it, it's something you're proud of, then you're good. If you're like, I'm iffy about this, well, go and fix that thing, but also keep in mind that you're on a timing thing, right? So you have to have stuff out there at some point for people to look at. So yeah, I think that's going to be a challenge. It definitely can be done. It's just harder to not have that piece of paper or certificate from a boot camp. Clive's cracking me up. Imagine paying thousands for online videos and a piece of paper. Academia is a joke. I think there's probably a much longer conversation about just like the worth of degrees. Mainly right now, it's just that they're not required anymore, but they're almost required for most paths. We are opening up opportunities more and more in this area specifically, but in general, like everyone's advice is like, go get a degree. But we have like skilled trade jobs that are not being filled because people aren't being pushed in that direction. So that's certainly option for whatever people want to do that. I had an amazing college experience. The benefit for me, and this is different than most people, my parents didn't make much money. I was covered all on financial aid and even got some money back every semester. So for me, I look back at my college experience. I basically like made a few grand to go to college. Everything was paid for, books, housing, food. I mean, this was like, I didn't have to cook dinner. I had all these wonderful friends. I got to play basketball every day. Like such an incredible, amazing experience. And that skewed because I didn't have to pay anything for it. But like my wife, who's sitting next to me, had some money. I don't know if she wants to come over here or not, but she had some student loans from going to Vanderbilt, and we've paid it off. And I would say that, and you've actually got on, you'll see here first. That's the delayed version. She's got her Vanderbilt stuff on too. She probably won't stay here long. But we were able to pay off her student loans after a couple of years. And I would say that you have to be very intentional to do that. Like we spent a lot more money on paying off student loans than we did on like taking Carnival cruises and like going out and partying every night. So we were pretty intentional about it. But you can go to cheaper colleges too. Like Vanderbilt, we didn't pay much, or she didn't pay much for, but it's like $70,000 a semester now. That's wild. You definitely don't need that sort of thing. So you can kind of scale it down a little bit. I know I'm behind on this, Danny, but Danny is here. Says I'm a non-degree group. Yes, you are, and you're great. And it's your birthday today. Was it today or yesterday? I think you said today, Danny. So happy birthday to D Thompson Dev in here. Pacing was an issue. Cool. I'd love to get some Udemy recommendations. Funky Amish Man, if you want to send me a message on Twitter or email, so James Q Quick on Twitter and james.q.quick@gmail for my email, I'll be happy to send you some recommendations, especially if you have like what areas that you're interested in. I can help guide you there. Most of the stuff that I've done is like JavaScript related, but Danny says, yeah, happy birthday all the way around to Danny. Danny says, would you suggest meetups as a great way to build a network? What are other ways you could suggest to build a network if you don't have a degree? Also, would you say that Danny is an amazing student and the definition of goals? Yes, I would say Danny is pretty amazing. Definition of hashtag goals. I'll go with that. Danny is definitely one of our like Memphis success stories out of the boot camp that I taught. And it's really cool to see so many people go through that program, 10 to 15 or so, and then like transition their careers into a career in tech. So it's really just special for me to be a part of that. Would you suggest meetups? Absolutely. I think your network is anybody and everybody that you come in touch with. And the more people that you find that are going through the same things, that are learning the same things, that are doing more than you, people that you can look up to, people that you can work with on the same level, and everything in between, the better off you'll be. That can be going to meetups. That can be my biggest engagement with the dev community is on Twitter. That's where I do the majority of my stuff is on Twitter. That's where I promote my stuff the most. That's where I engage the most. That's where I learn almost the most. Instead of posting stuff on Stack Overflow, I post on Twitter almost every time. And I almost always find someone who has a good answer to what I'm looking for. So online in any platform, Reddit, I don't actually use Reddit, but a lot of people do. Reddit could be good. Twitter's great. Forums, Discord, Slack channels that you can get into. In Memphis, we've got a couple that are local. The MemTech group, the Code Connector group is actually across the country, several different cities, but Code Connector is great, which a lot of the people in the chat are in. Yeah, there's anything that you can do to find people that you can get inspired by, that you can learn from, that you can learn with, and find people that you can teach also. So one of my mottos is learn, build, teach. You spend time learning stuff, you take what you learn to build stuff, and then you teach other people how to do it too. Going through that process really helps you like solidify the things that you think you understand. So you should find people that, one, you can help mentor to be able to teach. You should find people that you can learn from to aspire to be able to do the things that they do. And then you should also just build stuff regardless. So yes, tons of different ways to build a network. Go in person, be online, whatever you got to do. Go out there and interact with people. JC, if you could design your own bootcamp program, what would you teach students to be competitive as a self-taught dev? Great question. It would be influenced by the area that it is in. So you can kind of look at the targeted area that the bootcamp is in and say, these are the languages that are most important in this area. I personally would probably jump for just JavaScript. And the reason is one of the problems that I had in the bootcamp, Launch Code Bootcamp that JC was a part of, and Danny and Lawrence. One of the problems was we started with Python, which is a great way to introduce people to programming. And we did basically like full stack Python. And then we transferred over to Java. And I think we just lost too many people. I think it was too difficult for that short of time to switch that drastically, where we still hadn't fully reinforced the concepts of full stack development in Python. And now we're switching over to something brand new and adding object-oriented programming and classes and all that stuff on top of it. I thought that was too much. So my ideal bootcamp would be JavaScript front to back. So it'd be JavaScript front end, JavaScript node server, some sort of database. It doesn't really matter which one. Could be anything, maybe like a PostgreSQL or Postgres. And you would go through this, like start on the front end, build a simple thing, then kind of progress into, all right, now we need to be able to actually like have this do something, build your back end with Node, and then connect to a database so that by the end of the bootcamp, you would have like 4 demoable full stack applications. And ideally this would be like super hands-on, not a scripted homework assignment. I think that bit us too in Launch Code. I didn't necessarily like that it was like, here's your starter code. Now do this, do this, do this. I would definitely rather see something like, I want you to build an app that demos what you're most excited about. And I want you to build a CRUD app that lets you save whatever type of information you want to. Something that forces the student to get creative and learn how to build a program from scratch. I think that's one of the biggest issues we had was we got to like the portfolio, like building a capstone project, and people didn't know how to start from scratch. That was a big struggle. So I would recommend like everything is project driven, project based, and you stay in one language. You really just reinforce the crap out of core concepts in full stack development. By the end of that, you've got a really good understanding of those concepts. You can apply them in any framework that you need to going forward, and you didn't have this context switching of going between different languages. So that's the way I would approach that. Rashad said, I've registered for 2 courses online, Web Dev Masterclass and the Selftaught Programmer. I wonder, I don't know if people want to see my screen, but I'll switch it over. So on Udemy, I just want to look these up really quickly. The first one is the Web Dev Master Class. I wonder who this one is by. Is that this one? So I'm not familiar with that one, but you can tell, actually either one of these, you can tell that one of the things I look at is how many hours of content. That's not necessarily a great gauge, but I like to feel like I'm getting my money's worth on Udemy. And then you look at the ratings, 1,000+ ratings is a lot. And then 4.2 average is really good as well. And the other one was Selftaught Programmer. This one sounds interesting. I wonder who that one is by. Selftaught Programmer, Definitive Guide, 6 total hours by Corey Althoff. I don't know who that is. Ratings look good. Not as many ratings. So yeah, I could look through this more in depth later on and just kind of see. But 6 hours, you could go through that relatively quickly, regardless, especially if you're spending a lot of time focused on it. All right. Great question. Who are the people behind those? Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I didn't even go down through the list. So you answered that question of who that was. And then I'm going through the chat too. Lawrence and JC say hi, Jess. This was like 10 minutes ago. She waves back at everyone. Slayer Darth, welcome. Hi there. This is my trigger topic. Cool. Happy birthday to Danny. Not familiar with those at all. Okay, cool. Narrative says that Pluralsight has free April month going on. I'm not advertising, but it's cool. Don't worry about advertising. That is a great thing to share. Pluralsight is, I use Udemy for most of my stuff. Pluralsight is definitely up there on really top-notch content. And I know some instructors that teach there as well. So Pluralsight being free for April, take advantage of that. If you don't already have some stuff lined up, take advantage of the fact that Pluralsight is free for a month. Danny, thank you everyone. Birthday today, coding, spending time inside. We actually sat outside on our patio this morning, and it just feels beautiful outside. It was so nice. Yeah, actually, so Slayer Dar says Switch has burgeoning, is that how you say that? Developer community growing really big. So watching programmers live code on Twitch, something that I do on Thursdays and Fridays. Thursdays at 2 p.m. Central and Fridays on 11 a.m. Come check that out of mine in the future. But yes, those are really great ways to watch. And then communities on Slack and Discord are a great one as well. Funky Amish Man says it's often cited that you remember 90% of what you teach others. That's a percentage. That percentage is simplistic, but the idea, cool. Yeah, great. I totally agree. I think that's one I enjoy teaching, but it certainly helps me understand the things that I think I understand by teaching others. Lawrence said quickcodecamp.com. Lawrence, that link didn't work. If you want to try to pass in another link, I'm not sure what that was, but if you want to share that, I'll try to open it up. All right. Slayer Darth says we had a few issues with juniors who came through boot camps in that they built projects rapidly using the latest frameworks without knowing much about the underlying language's work. Do you agree that it is one of the main issues with a typical boot camp that they place too much emphasis on their candidates being job ready instead of teaching them to use the local latest technologies? Got it. Okay. So here's what I would say. Boot camps move so fast that you're really not going to understand everything that you do. Hands down. The goal of a boot camp is to get a job. So focusing on getting a job is absolutely there. I think when you hire a boot camp grad or someone coming out of college, regardless, you know there's a steep learning curve for them and it's going to take time for them to contribute. So I think companies need to understand that. They need to know how to work with entry-level developers. They need to have either a formal or informal mentorship program available for them. They need to have someone they can go and ask questions to. They need to have people that can teach them to continue to grow. They obviously want to. They obviously are passionate about it, or they wouldn't have gone to a boot camp. So the goal of a boot camp, hands down, is to get a job. For the boot camps themselves, what's important for them to continue are their numbers of success. So like any other thing, I think it happens that people game the system a little bit by saying their numbers are better than they are. I think personally that what we did with Launch Code, and I think this is more an example of how boot camps go, just trying to move so quickly. I don't think a lot of people, well, actually most people weren't ready for jobs when we finished Launch Code. And I think it's because we moved too fast. That's why if I go to what would my ideal boot camp be, I wouldn't do the context switching of going to a different language and framework. I would go to like, here's one, let's do everything front to back. Let's understand the core concepts so that you can go and apply them in the future. Because if you jumped around from different ones and you don't understand the core concepts, getting into like real world code is going to be that much more difficult. So the downside of boot camps is that they go too fast, like hands down. That's it. It goes too fast. And the goal is to get a job. So that's great. People have to understand that there's a learning curve for people, regardless of boot camp or CS degree or self-taught, on getting their first job of being a real world developer. People have to understand that, and they have to know how to support it, hands down. Did I answer every part of that? I place too much emphasis on being candidate ready. Yeah, it's a tough balance. But at the same time, like you've had that experience, and I'm sure lots of people have had that experience as well. Think about how many people have gone through boot camps and become very successful developers very quickly. Really, they need an opportunity. They need some mentorship. They need a way to grow in that opportunity, and they need a way to prove that to you. So it's part of how boot camps work. It's just part of what it is. If people understand what it represents when you get done, if you find the person that's excited to learn, that will continue to learn, that person will do great even if they don't have a lot of understanding starting out. Or they have some gaps, right? They're definitely going to have some gaps. This is also one of the things I mentioned about one of the benefits of going through my computer science degree is I do have a more formal background in programming as a whole, data structures, algorithms, how languages work, that kind of stuff. So that's one of the things that I highly encourage my students to continue to do. You will need that knowledge, so that's where it's on them to continue to build that knowledge in those areas that would have been a gap coming out of the boot camp. All right. Ted Patterson is in the building, one of my favorite people in the world. Jess gave you a shout out, Ted, if you didn't hear her in the background. Ted says Code Connector is, you can get connected with Code Connector at codeconnector.io/Slack. Ted is, I would say, a pretty modest person, but Ted completely grew this Code Connector group out of literally nothing in multiple different cities across the country. And it's like just an amazing story, an amazing thing for me to be a part of. And everyone in here that's in Memphis, JC, Lawrence, Danny, myself, have all become a part of that community and invested in that community and helped that community grow. And it's just such a cool thing to see. So Ted is in the building. Really happy that Ted made it here. Cool. Thanks for the link. Link was a joke. Oh, sorry. I didn't, Quit Code Camp. Gotcha. Sorry, Lawrence. I didn't realize that was a joke. All right. Ted says, for someone that got a degree in music, not related to computer science, and then transitioned into design and tech on my own, it was tough and depressing at times, but I think mentors, user groups, beginners that I learned with in quick freelance gigs, I was able to eventually break through to a full-time job. This is something, even though I've got experience self-teaching and teaching a boot camp, I don't have the experience of trying to find a job without a degree on my resume. That's something I will never fully understand, But I do know from talking to people that makes it so much tougher. And from a hiring perspective, when I was at FedEx, people had to have a degree of some sort. So how do you hire someone that doesn't have a degree at all, regardless of whether or not it's related to CS? We at FedEx had kind of adopted the ability to hire people without a computer science degree, but still required a degree. So if you don't have the specific degree or a degree at all, it's incredibly tough and you have to like overprove yourself. But if you think about, depending on where you are in your life, the potential to go to college for a year or 4 years versus going to a boot camp for 6 months and then working your ass off after that for 6 months to prove yourself and build projects and get a few like side clients, you can do it the same by spending way less money and way less time. It's definitely doable, but it is really hard. It can be depressing. It's tough to send in resumes and get ignored, but you certainly can do it. You just have to you have to demonstrate that you're good enough so that people can't ignore you, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know who's the best developer, you know. Like Wes Boss is one of the people that I think of, a JavaScript teacher in courses that I follow. If Wes Boss went and applied for like a web development position at almost any company, they're probably going to be like, yeah, hands down, you're hired. You don't need to interview, nothing, right? Because he's proved himself so many different times in so many different ways that he is good at what he does. So you have to prove yourself. You have to sell yourself. You have to have a resume that sells what you can do. You have to have that portfolio and items on your portfolio that people can go and see that speak to your capabilities as a developer. Slayerdar says, I think bootcamp should be better integrated with companies. You teach them the basics and then partner with companies. Then your graduates who are still with a partner company like 2 months or so, the bootcamp organizer gets a flat fee. Very interesting. LaunchCode actually had something very similar to this, especially in St. Louis, where they started and have deep connections. It didn't work out that well in Memphis, but they had the same idea of like getting like internship type things where you get an hourly rate for, I don't know, a couple of months. And then if you do well, you continue to stay on full time. And then LaunchCode would have gotten some of that money. So that's what they've done pretty successfully in other places, especially St. Louis. So yes, I agree with that. They also had the ability to do like specific training. So if they're like trying to get people hired into a specific company, LaunchCode had some content that was specific to those technology areas that they could throw in addition to the regular bootcamp content to get people prepared for that area. So yes, targeting what the employers are going to hire for and teaching those skill sets is definitely a great idea. It's something that I think all boot camps try to do to a certain extent. How well they integrate with a specific company, probably a little bit less, but it's a great idea. JC says, if boot camps go too fast, does self-taught go too slow? And if so, how to get job ready faster as a self-taught? Self-taught doesn't move too slow. Self-taught moves at your pace. You could certainly fall in. It depends on how hungry you are, right? Like if you like have a family to provide for and you have to have a job to do that and you have no other way to go, like you're probably going to move pretty quick through the self-learning, self-teaching phase. And it also depends on what else you have going on. If you don't have a job, if you do have a job, if you have responsibilities, if you don't have responsibilities, it depends on how much time you have. But self-teaching is at your pace. And I think you have to, one thing you might miss out on is pushing yourself enough. Like boot camps are certainly going to push you, I think, a little bit too much in terms of speed. So what's the balance in your self-teaching? This is where like having a network of people to kind of check in with to say, here's what I know so far. What else do I need to know to feel like I'm ready? What else should I be able to demonstrate to feel like I'm ready? And that's on you, right? Like this is a super highly personal, self-motivated thing to go through the self-teaching route, trying to transition your career and get your first job in programming. So is it too slow? No, not necessarily. It depends on how you move and how motivated you are and how important it is for you to get that first job ASAP. Will Johnson is in the chat, who I think I've listened to. I forget, was it what was that podcast on, Will, that you sent me, the Tech Junior? Anyway, Will has a really fascinating story to me. I am super inspired by a lot of people in the chat already, but people who go through boot camps and people who self-teach and people who just learn in an effort to transition their career. And I don't want to speak too much on the specifics for Will, but like during working a full-time job, he was staying up late, he was busting his ass, he was helping people, he was teaching people. And now I forget your title at Egghead, but Egghead is one of the like premier online instructional platforms now, especially in like the modern web development stuff. And has gotten a job working for Egghead, which is just really incredible. So I'd love, Will, if you have any comments and insights to what I say and what other people ask, feel free to throw those in the chat. I think that would be super great. And yeah, I love the story of people like working their ass off and changing their career. I think it's so cool. Slayer Dar said, in my opinion, there are so many free online resources out there. You don't even need to attend college for most disciplines these days, as it's all available online. You can, yes. Is it a hell of a lot harder to do it without the degree? Yes, hands down. I will never understand what it's like to apply for a job without my computer science degree. I have it. No one can take that away from me. I do know it's a hell of a lot harder without that degree to break in. After you break in and you get that first job and you've proven yourself and you have work experience, I think it's more or less the same for everybody after that. But getting that first job is a hell of a lot harder for people who don't have the degree. So you have to balance that out. Can it be done? Absolutely. Is it harder? Yes. You can also, like, just to get the degree, you can go to a community college or a cheaper, whatever the cheapest option is to get the paper and then learn yourself to fill in the gaps that you didn't get in whatever program you did. It helps. Chris is in the chat. What's up? How's it going, Chris? I don't know, Chris, what's your background? I don't know degree-wise if you have a degree, if it's related to programming or design or UX or what. What's your background in? Self-taught since 96. That should be a sticker, like something you have on your thing. That's awesome. That's really cool. All right, going back up. Slayer Dar says, what if you're stuck in a dead-end job you hate doing and you self-teach at a fast pace to get out of that dead-end job ASAP? One of my students in Launch Code did that, and he enjoyed the job, but he knew he wanted more or different, and it was kind of dead end. Like I think he didn't get a promotion that he thought he should, or so, I don't really remember the details, but it was kind of your definition of a dead end job. And dude, it was so inspiring because he would message me in Slack and he would ask questions and he would say, oh, I'm looking at this resource and blah, blah, blah. And we would go and meet for coffee. Like, here's the thing. If I, as a mentor to a lot of people, out of the conversations that I've had with lots of people across the world, if I offer you my email address and you don't take advantage of using that in some form, you're doing yourself a disservice. And I don't mean me specifically. I mean anyone that can provide you mentorship and help and guidance, whoever that is. If they offer you help, support, and guidance and you don't take advantage of it, you're missing out. That's on you. This is like, I don't think a lot of people are used to pushing themselves and learning what they need to do to get to where they want to be. So I think you see a lot of people who consider this type of stuff and they give up for various reasons, but you have to look at every single opportunity you have to take advantage of learning and mentorship and support. You have to do it. And I don't mean this as a knock to people, but like in a meetup recently, I gave out my personal email and there was at least 5 or 6 people who were pretty new. One person emailed me and I responded back to them like that night. And then I had some more thoughts and sent some more thoughts like the next day, right? Only one person out of those 5 or 10 people emailed me. And I think that's where you find the difference. The people who people are like, hey, we're in the same city. Can we go get coffee? Can I just ask you questions? Like as a content creator, I called Wes Boss or I like messaged him, was like, hey man, I would just like to like ask you questions like 3 years ago. And he's now one of the like premier content creators in the world. Andrew Mead, who's a great content creator on Udemy as well. I did the same thing with him. And he's actually going to join a stream with me in 2 weeks. So 2 Fridays from now, he's going to join, which I'm like mind blown that he would join with me. But I'm just like reaching out to these people. I'm like, if you have anything to offer me, or can I just ask you questions, do that. Like you can't overestimate how much that mentorship is. So if you're stuck at a dead end job and you're really motivated to do what you got to do to get out of there, you'll do all of those things. Will, that was him. That was super dead end job. And like just the things that I heard him talk about, and I almost wish he was live to like talk through some of those things too. It's really incredible to see what people will do to get to that next level when you know what you want and you're motivated to do it and you won't stop to get there. Let's see. So Chris said he did go back to school after dropping out 4 times after high school. I got an associate's in applied science with a major in web development. So at this point, you got an associate's, which I think is easier, cheaper to get. I can't speak too much to how much or how long it took, but I imagine it was cheaper and faster to get than a full degree. I imagine that made it a lot easier for Chris to get a job. Now, this just goes back to the idea that it's easier with some sort of like diploma. It's easier with that thing on your resume. You can certainly do it without it, but it's easier. But it's also interesting that like he had already been self-teaching. I'm assuming, I'm putting words in your mouth a little bit, Chris, that you went to do that to open up more opportunities for you. And you may or may not have learned a ton in that program. I'm not sure. But you can take advantage and learn along the way regardless if you take that into control yourself. And I think that would have made things a lot easier on Chris. So regardless of where you are in your stage in your career, regardless of where you are in terms of education, all these routes are open to you. If you have the opportunity to get something like an associate's degree just to help you out, do that too. And he says, yes, I did because everyone said I would do nothing with my life or go to college. First in my immediate family to graduate college. Love to hear that. That's super cool. Mine's a little bit different. I was the first person to go to school outside of Memphis, which I still thought was cool. My family, most of my family, my mom didn't go to college or she didn't finish. My uncle, my grandfather, my granny didn't go. Like a lot of people didn't go to college. If they did, they went to school in Memphis, and I was the first one to kind of break out and go outside of Memphis. But that's still different than, that's super cool to be the first one to graduate from college. That's amazing. That's so awesome. Let's see. A couple of things that Will did. Went to meetups, blogged, conferences, volunteered at workshops and kids' classes. I spoke at meetups. I asked to be on a podcast. Like, there's literally nothing stopping you from doing all of those things if you're motivated to. I think the blogging one is really interesting. Blogging and teaching. And that's because with blogging, you're teaching, right? You're having to explain difficult concepts in a way that other people can understand, which is so difficult. Blogging for me is difficult, much more difficult than video, but that's kind of a separate story. But if you look at someone who's done all the things that Will just said he did, he blogged, and you can read a couple of his articles and know that he knows what he's talking about. He's spoken at conferences or gone to conferences at least, volunteered to teach. Like, you see those tangible things that he has to show you that he will be a great hire. He did the things that are tangible that you can see. I love the idea of people starting their own blog. I would highly recommend people starting their own blog. It gives you a project to work on from a development perspective. I've learned a ton by building up my personal site in the last couple of years by adding a blog to it. And blogging gives you a little bit of credibility that something else can't. I'm going to switch over because I want to show, who is it? Flavio. I don't know if people have seen Flavio Copes. Has anyone seen his blog before? Flavio Copes, this is like just a badass example of what a blog can be. None of his blog posts are that long. And I think, let's see. Here's a blog post, right? Not many words, not overly detailed, but he's done a blog. Hey, the Twitch chat app is looking good. What do you mean, Brad? You can't see the chat in the stream, can you? Like, because I still haven't figured that out. So I'm not sure what you mean. But if you look through here, he's done one every day, March 18, 19, 20, 21st, 22, right? You just go through here and look at all the shit he's learned and that he's tried to explain to people. Like, look at all of that stuff. If you're a hiring person and you see that, takes initiative. He's got a nice looking blog. He designed it. He built it. He figured out how to build it. He figured out to scale to all these hundreds of articles that he's done. He's got promotional stuff like that. That's the kind of person you want to hire. And not everything is all about, hey, can you solve this coding problem? Some of it is, but a lot of it's personality and passion, and can you work well with people, and can you help teach people? Can you learn? Are you excited to learn? Like, these different things are a package that you can put together to show that you're someone that should get hired and get whatever that job is. Let's see. Problem is, no one will hire me because I'm not a JS dev. This is a tough thing, right? So Chris is going through this now, where you've got lots of experience on like UX, UI, and then CSS, but not as much JavaScript experience. And this is where again, I'm kind of speaking for you, Chris, so jump in here more. This is where, like, I'm assuming part of building the blog that you're doing is to increase your JavaScript experience, as well as to give yourself like a demoable portfolio thing, as well as to give yourself a platform to blog on that's yourself. And then you've done things like, I don't think you've released it yet, but the what's it called? The Ipsum generator in JavaScript. Like, we worked on that, and just doing those things is going to help you build those skills to help you be in the best position to get a job. Now, that doesn't mean it's easy, and I think that's where we sell people short. Is we talk about boot camps, and we talk about self-teaching, and we talk about success stories, and we don't understand. A lot of people don't understand how freaking difficult it is to do any of those things, and how hard it is to stick with it when it just doesn't make sense and you get stuck and you don't know how to go to the next thing. That's where your network comes in. That's where having people that you can look to for mentorship, for support, for just having a conversation, for answering technical questions. You have to have that sort of group around you, whether it's in person or remote, to be able to work through those times. Boot camps, self-teaching are hard as hell. Flat out, hands down, it's hard as hell. And I don't think we focus enough on how hard it is, so that when it gets tough, people weren't expecting it to be that tough. And sometimes they back away from it because they're not used to that or weren't expecting it. Which I'm assuming, Brad, you talking about this thing? Yeah, it's working well, which is pretty cool. So want to take it to the next level. All right, I'm going to switch back to just my webcam. And Will says, yes, blogging is great. I even got reached to blog for a company for pay. Yes, that's an opportunity as well. Freelance blogging. I have written for Scotch.io and been asked to write for several other places. And articles, people can pay you like $100 to $300, or I think that's pretty average as far as I've seen for writing articles. You get free promotion. You get something that you can point to on your resume. It shows that you've got skills to explain and talk and write. It's a great thing to do. Flight Wizard says, if you don't do JS, you shouldn't be looking at front-end jobs. Okay. Language has changed quite a bit. It is now web development, HTML, CSS, and planning. And planning is now web development or UI, UX. I'm not sure. Yeah, I feel like that's going to be a controversial. That's going to be a controversial topic, which, like, I'm behind in the chat, but I'm seeing this like kind of develop in here. My opinion, if your website is not usable without any JavaScript to be disabled, you're doing something wrong. Most front end roles. So here's what I would say. JavaScript opens up more opportunities for you. I don't think there's much argument with that. And I think, Chris, that's why you're working on building those JavaScript skills, because you're realizing more opportunities are available with having JavaScript in that combination of HTML, CSS, accessibility, UI, UX, that sort of stuff. So I'm not going to jump into that debate too much. Just going to say that, like, I think we can probably all agree that it opens up more opportunities, not necessarily because Chris wants to write JavaScript, just because it opens up more opportunities. Fair enough. Brad says, I think Brad was trying to like change the topic here with his comment, which is good. I just realized one of my lights is out. Hold on one second. That thing did not turn on. Did I? Let me see this. No one wanted to tell me. That thing's not even registered in here. Wow. That's not good. Is that thing plugged in, Jess? The light? Like, totally going off topic. Yes. Do you mind plugging that in? All right. Sorry. Side note. Brad says, I've got a good story. I spent, oh shit. Wow. All right. Hold on. Let me turn it on though. Little technical details. All right. Leave it. That's fine. Leave it. Just leave it there. Balls. Is it on the on position?
I think so.
Like not the reset?
It's on the 1. There's 1, 0, and then 2.
Does it say like reset and on or no?
I'll look at the other side.
Hold on one second. I'll be right back.
It's on the same thing.
Yeah, it is.
Can
Okay.
you approve this real fast?
What do you mean?
Not for us.
Well, no, we already talked about that too.
No, I'm gonna do it.
All right, fine. All right, sorry about that. All right, let's see. So Brad said, I've got a good story. I spent 9 years at Dell doing Python DevOps. 3 years ago, I started learning web development. I spent $0. Now a front-end dev at Adobe. Perfect. I think, one, you had the advantage of having experience, right, in Python and DevOps. So you've got experience, but then you transition your career by self-teaching. And that's what I feel like I did. I probably spent $50 in Udemy and then watched a ton of stuff on YouTube. So yeah, awesome story. I love to hear that. Chris said he wrote for David Walsh. I know that name. I've been to the blog. I don't know him. I don't know him personally at all. Writing for Progress, super cool. Would love to write for Scotch and Chris. Yeah, Chris is in a weird spot, because they got acquired by DigitalOcean. So I don't know how much of the community like author program they're doing, but you could reach out to him and ask. Brad says Dell was terrible. I really wasted a large chunk of my early career. Well, you learned what you wanted to do in the future. Move to Adobe and increase salary by 50%. I think this is one of the important things also. Your first job is your first job. And if it's not your ideal job, but it's something you had to do because you had to take that first one, you should be figuring out how to get to your next one. You should be doing things in your first job as you can to prepare yourself for your next one. You should be building your network. You should be finding opportunities to get experience in certain areas. If they pay for training, take advantage of the fact that they might pay for training. Use that first job, if it's not ideal, to work out what your next one is and prepare yourself as much as you can. What are you using for the backlight on the couch? It's the Eve light. I think they were part of Elgato and now they're their own thing. So it's the Eve light strip, which is kind of expensive. It's like $75. But it's really, really nice. And in theory, I can control it from my Stream Deck and I can control it from this thing up here. So I could change the color, I think. Did that change? Yeah, I'm just looking at the Twitch. It'll come through in Twitch in a sec. There we go. So yeah, I think it's really, really cool. It's really nice. So I found much better coworkers, more exciting projects, and a more engaging company culture. Yeah. One Pocket Pimp says hello. What's up? Lighting seemed fine before. Yeah, I'm missing one, so it's whatever. I need to leave my company when I can. All right, I'm gonna leave that alone so I don't advertise maybe who you are and what you're leaving. Flight Wizard, if you're looking for a huge company like Shopify, they are leading the example with new definitions of jobs. They have UX developers that are HTML, CSS focused, and they have front-end developers, JavaScript focused. All right. All right, looks like I'm almost caught up, but Danny says, plot twist, it isn't a light, but a mirror reflecting back all the glory of James Quick. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. You just can't buy that mirror for everyone else. I like D. Thompson Dev's explanation better. Absolutely. That is sick. Want to hear something funny I did yesterday on a stream? Let me guess, Chris, because I think I saw this. You purchased something on your stream and got the credit card like left in the stream. Is that right? Messed up. Was it the credit card? Is that what it was? Yep. Yeah, it's such a fun. So like what? Here's an important thing, like to go back a little bit on topic. Like every day is a learning experience. Like in my job now, my job is a little bit different than the traditional developer, right? It's different. A lot of my job is speaking and videos and content, and now it's streaming. And I've spent like every day for the past week learning more about setup and streaming and how to do this and how to do that. Like everything you do almost every single day is a learning experience. You're never done learning. If you see someone that knows more to you, that's just because they have experience with that thing and you haven't gotten that experience yet. You can go out of your way to get that experience. You naturally take in a lot just by doing your job, but I think you have to force yourself to constantly have the mindset that you're learning, and that's just going to continue to make you better and better, and it's going to open up more opportunities for yourself. Chris says, Mike saying is awesome. This is the road, it's like $100, which is expensive compared to like I had a $30 one before, but this is so much better. So this is like, if you watch people who stream, a lot of them have this exact one. See, how can I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. If you have the money to spend, and I understand that like $100 is a lot for people to spend, if you have the money, I would invest in it as opposed to something else. If you don't have the money, grab a $30 one or however much it is, and I'm sure you'll be fine. This one just is a significant step up from the one that I had before. Brad, do you do these streams for Auth0 or just personal? Yeah, let's take a second to talk about my job personally. I wouldn't be able to do this stuff during the day if it weren't for working at Auth0. I get to, as a developer advocate, try to genuinely like increase my brand exposure for me, which then in turn leads to Auth0. So Auth0 is an identity company where we do authorization and authentication services for developers. Our goal is to make integrating authentication and authorization into your applications as a developer as easy as possible. With that said, we are working on a regular cadence of streams on the Auth0 channel. Yes, I did the first one ever, which was really successful. Had a blast, had a lot of people there about a month ago. The next stream for Auth0 is coming up April 7th, this coming Tuesday, where my coworker Sam is going to work with someone from the Apollo team. So check that out. It is the channel is Auth0, AUTH0, the number 0. Go and check that out. We will be on a regular cadence of doing, I think, 2 streams a month. The plan now is for them to be 1 a month on the first Tuesday of the month at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And then we'll do the 3rd Tuesday of the month, and it will alternate between times that fit for Europe and APAC, Asia. So they will rotate doing the content there. Myself, Sam, and Tyler, who was in the chat yesterday, and Sam I think was too, we will rotate through doing the once a month streams on the Auth0 channel the first Tuesday of the month at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So check that out if you're interested. I need a better one. Yeah, Chris, like I said, if you have the money, this is hands down so much better than the one I had before. I've got the same stand, totally worth it. Yeah, it's an amazing situation because you get to increase your personal brand on work time. Yes, I couldn't be more excited with where I am in my career. I couldn't be more excited to like be an influencer in the sense of like providing mentorship, engaging with people, collaborating. It helps me like stay motivated because I get to see so many people do so much cool stuff. I get to constantly learn, like coming on and figuring out all this Twitch stuff and streaming and setup and all that stuff. I get to get exposure to different technologies and like build cool stuff. I couldn't be more excited about where I am specifically at Auth0 than I am now. So yes, it's definitely been super, super, super positive for me so far. How are we doing on time, by the way? We're an hour and 15 minutes in. Connected VPN killed Twitch. Oh, does the FedEx VPN not allow you to do Twitch? Brad, if you ever want to talk more about DevRel, let me know. I love it. It's perfect for me. It's perfect for the right person. It's not perfect for a lot of people, but it is perfect for the right person. So if you ever want to talk about that more, let me know. Water Seeker says, how do you feel about programs like Free Code Camp and Project Odin versus boot camps and degrees? So this gets into like self-teaching. One of the downsides of self-teaching is you don't have someone specifically leading you through stuff real time. Free Code Camp has curriculum. You can go through it, which is absolutely amazing. DevRel is developer relations, by the way. That developer advocate, technical evangelist, that sort of thing. So that's one of the downsides of self-learning, is that you don't real time have someone that is giving you the structure and telling you what it is that you need to learn along the way and grading you on how you do it. Free Code Camp is amazing. It's structured, but it's not real time in the sense that you have someone there with you to explain if you get stuck. That's one of the downsides, is you can spend an hour on one thing on Free Code Camp because you missed something. They've got hints and stuff built in, which help, I think. But you don't have someone there to actually give you the in-person guidance. So that's the downside. The good side about this, like Free Code Camp and everything else, there's so many resources. You can absolutely learn the things you need to that way, but it takes a certain type of person to do that themselves, to stay motivated enough to drive themselves to do those things, to be motivated enough to network, to have people to ask questions about what they should be learning, how they should approach it, to double check the things that they do, to get feedback from. You have to be a really motivated person, and you may not be naturally social, but you have to be pretty social to build that network and group of people around you that you trust to get insight and feedback from. That takes a lot of effort without someone there leading you through it in person. So definitely a viable option. It's a difficult thing to do. And I don't know, like if I was in a position that I was transitioning careers, one of the things I could never do, I never had a fallback system where I could leave my job and not make money. That's tough for people. Like if you can't not make money, since basically high school, like anything that I needed, I paid for and I worked for. Through college, everything was paid for from from financial aid. I didn't have to pay anything back. So I worked my job to have money for like clothes and gas and whatever I wanted. I've never been in a position to not do that. So for people who can't go to a boot camp for time or money, self-teaching is our only route. There's tons of resources out there, but it is a very challenging thing to do without people there to specifically lead you. So your network of people that you can trust and get insight from and support from becomes more and more important. Definitely a self-learner requires a good mentor to help you get unstuck. Yeah. So the idea with what my Friday streams are going to be in the future, not every Friday, but in general, Fridays at 11 a.m., same time, Central. What I'm doing is a getting started series that I'm calling Learning Quick. I need to make sure I get that straight. There's this old country thing in the South where people say instead of I'm going to teach you, they say I'm going to learn you something. So it's learning quick in terms of teaching me, but then also learning something quickly. And my biggest pet peeve is getting into a new technology or framework. And Chris, I think you've experienced this recently with Gatsby. You have something that's really simple that you just don't quite get, or you're missing, or the documentation is missing something, and you get stuck on this one little thing that you can't figure out for hours maybe, where if you had someone that could just say, oh, you just need to do this one thing, that's what you need. There's a balance between spending your time struggling and learning versus it's law of diminishing returns, right? At a certain point, spending time debugging stuff is super useful. At a certain point, it's not useful anymore if you spend too much time just sitting there not doing anything. So learning quick is teaching me. Also learning something quickly. So I want to get people onto my channel that can help me walk through some sort of technology framework, something new for me. And we kind of talk about it together, and I can phrase questions from a newbie's perspective, and they can teach me and we can get going, and I can draw parallels to other things I've done. And I think it's just going to be a really cool experience. So the first one is 2 weeks from now with Andrew Mead, an instructor that I've taken lots of content from about GraphQL. I'm super excited about that, to have him on. I've already got 3 or 4 scheduled after that. I don't know if I've sent Chris a link to jump on and do this with me as well, but I need to send him the link. Ruby on Rails could be interesting. I have done Ruby on Rails, but it's been a while, and Ruby as a language didn't really click with me. So I would be up for that. That'd be interesting. So if anyone else is interested in joining me for those types of opportunities, let me know, because I'm going to schedule those out just on Fridays, and we'll see how many we get. We've already got 4 or 5 booked. And Chris, I'll make sure to send you this link. And Will, if I didn't send you that already, sorry if I didn't, I'll send you the link to find a date that works for you too. All right. Looks like questions to the AMA are slowing down. Does anyone have any last questions on CS degree, programming bootcamp, and being self-taught? Any last questions before we wrap this one up? All right, Lawrence, thanks for coming, as always. Oh, and Code Connector, speaking of Lawrence, Code Connector has a virtual meetup if you want to give a shout out to that. Lawrence, this Saturday and the following Sunday, if we want to share that out. Lawrence, feel free to throw that in the chat as well. Brad asks, what was my path? So I have a traditional computer science degree. This wasn't intentional, but from Vanderbilt, I just happen to be wearing it. And then like Jess is wearing her Vandy gear too. So I have a traditional degree. I did basically DevRel for 3 years at Microsoft, where I didn't really learn much technically. Like I didn't learn software development. And I took some Udemy courses, and I'd never done JavaScript. I'd never done web development. And like since doing that, I've completely transitioned into being pretty JavaScript focused. And that's because of Udemy and YouTube and building stuff and like articles and all that kind of stuff. So I consider myself self-taught in that area. And then I've also taught a boot camp and just been around a lot of people that have gone through boot camp. So I feel like I've got experience in all of those areas, which is why I opened this up. Electrical engineer from UT. Awesome. Very cool. Funky Amish Man says, yeah, my career pivoted pretty greatly. Funky Amish Man says, did you have any students who got a job quickly after launch code? If so, what helped lead to that job? Yes. Lawrence, who was just in the chat. Danny, who has been in the chat. I don't know if Danny's still here. Two of my TAs have gotten placed. And then 4 or 5 other people who took the program as well. And things that helped them, they were really active in the community. That is one of the easiest things I can I can say is they were super active in the community. They took advantage in a good way of the people that they were around, of asking me questions, of asking themselves questions, of learning together, of pushing each other. And they just had a passion for it. They really enjoyed it. And that makes all the difference in the world. I think one of the reasons that I didn't learn as much in my CS degree is I didn't have the excitement for what I was doing that I have for web development and development today. I didn't know to appreciate it. I didn't appreciate it the way I do now. And my perspective on learning and doing things to learn is drastically different. By the way, I wish I could tilt my camera down because Jess is laying on the floor underneath my desk with her dog. Funky Amish Man, yeah. James Q Quick at gmail.com. And actually, I ought to start doing it this way. There's the puppy dog. Everybody see Savvy? You can also find it through my site on my contact page to send me an email that way. And Lawrence just shared the Code Connector, Zoom and meeting ID. And this will be tomorrow, Saturday at 1 p.m. Central Time. And what Code Connector is, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but it is just an open group for people that are interested in learning. So typically in person, we have a couple of different events. One is the Code Co-op, where we have a little bit of structured content, maybe a short presentation from someone like 15, 20 minutes, maybe a panel, and then like some exercises that we break out into groups and just try to learn from each other. The other activity that we do is the Code Togethers, which we started a couple of years ago. And this is just people getting together at a coffee shop, hanging out and talking about what they do and trying to learn from each other. So the Code Together meetup is the one that's tomorrow, and it's going to be pretty informal. I can't remember exactly how Lawrence is going to structure this. If you want to put that in the chat too. But there's the Zoom link and the meeting ID. And I would suggest if you're interested in these types of conversations and engaging with people of all different backgrounds and steps in their career, I would recommend joining the Code Connector group as well, because they're just flat out amazing. And the people that are involved so genuinely care about the community. It's just a great thing to be a part of. So I would recommend checking that out. as well at codeconnector.io. All right. I'll, one more minute for any last questions that people may have. This is where I don't have, I've set up a couple of sound effects. I haven't done them today, which you probably won't hear through this because I need to actually pipe it into the stream instead of just like out of my speakers. But I've got a couple of sound effects. I still need like a Jeopardy sound effect for when I ask questions and there's like awkward silence for a while, which I'm like more or less used to, but it still happens a lot. Where's the dog? I'm gonna grab the dog. Oh, there's a toy.
I just had the dog up there.
I know, but she said she wanted to try it again. So this is, maybe we'll have an episode of like Sevi writes code or Lily writes code. Yeah, Lily would probably sit up here on the table. All right, well, it looks like, well, let me let her down. Looks like no more questions in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and call it. I appreciate everyone being here today. This is a topic that I am particularly passionate about. I get super inspired from hearing people's different stories, working hard to get to whatever their next step is, caring about people in the community, teaching and helping people in the community. This is a really cool topic for me. I really enjoyed it. I want to do more like AMAs in the future. I don't know what topics that would be. So if you have any ideas for that, feel free to reach out and let me know. But thanks again for everyone that was here, that participated in the chat, that asked good questions. I really, really appreciate it. And in the future, streams on Thursdays at 2 p.m. Central and Friday at 11 a.m. Central, and maybe throw in some more after that. And then also the Auth0 channel. Go and give a follow to the Auth0 channel so you can see the amazing team of DevRel people that we have at Auth0 that'll be streaming twice a month starting Tuesday, April 7th. So, all right. Thanks one last time to everybody that's here, and peace out.